We're live. I tried to go live like 2 minutes ago because that was an awesome conversation, but it just didn't happen.
You got to hold forward and go live in the middle.
Yeah, fair enough. Welcome back to another episode. I'm pretty excited about this one because we're going to be talking about DACs and basically, what is a DAC and maybe some structures and use cases and stuff. So we might have a couple other people joining us in the next couple of weeks. In the next couple of minutes. We're definitely going to have some other people joining us in the next couple of weeks. Just in case you're new to the channel, well, thank you for being here the first time. And just a really quick introduction, from me. I'm co-host of this channel. My co-host Corey is off taking a break, some relaxation time. So I'm, trying to steer the ship away from the iceberg because he's, the back-end genius on the show. So do bear with me while I try to do everything. Michael and Luke and Lisa, maybe you guys could give a really quick, Twitter introduction, like super short.
Go, Michael.
Sure. We just figured out apparently I'm the show Pat. So I'm EOS USA. I'm CTO of I'm Michael from EOS USA, CTO over there, a block producer on quite a few different networks, and a frequent guest of the show and helping out with the DACATHON 2021 hosting, and glad to participate on another panel, and excited to see what Luke and everybody has that they've made their magic with.
My name is Luke Stokes. I'm Managing Director for the Foundation for Interwallet Operability. I've been involved in different blockchain projects from EOS DAC to Steem and Hive to EOS, and just super passionate about decentralized autonomous communities and corporations and companies and consortia and organizations and whatever you want to call it. A group of people with a shared goal trying to make the world a less violent place and come to consensus. So happy to chat with you guys. Thanks for having
me.
Hi. I'm Lisa Chandler. I'm from the Crown community, an active member of many communities, including MetaDAC, which is currently sponsoring DACATHon gaming, as probably everyone now knows because we've been going for like a week and a half. And we thought, now that we've heard a whole bunch of stories, we thought we'd talk about what is a DAC. So happy to be here today to do that.
Yeah, sweet. And like I said, I'm pretty excited to have this conversation because I think, well, when it comes to governance and politics, I mean, as we've seen in the real world, so oftentimes people have different ideas of what things should be like, right? And I kind of feel like DACs aren't really any different, but maybe the benefit for me of DACs is that people can self-organize into communities of people that they're like-minded with. However, whether that really gives a broad perspective on what can be done and what cannot, I'm not always so sure about. But I like the idea that everyone can have a say. And in my opinion, it's interesting because I was reading an article today and somebody was saying there is actually no need for DACs. Like, we don't need DACs. There's no point to have a DAC because we have Bitcoin. Took me a minute to think about this, but it kind of makes sense in a way, right? But it's a completely different structure, right? Like, a DAC is for governance, right? A DAC is for, maybe project management, or hopefully for me in the future, like potentially governance management, right? Like, I would like to see, we can go into this a little bit later, but I would like to see like governments run on DAC structures at some point in the future, right? We'll never give up people that are elected, but what we might actually get is people being able to say even simple things like where certain portions of their tax dollars go, right? As instead of just having like governance where everything is top-down approach. So, I mean, a DAC to me implies that everyone can have an equal say. It's not necessarily free. You can be the one voter and everyone else votes opposite of you. You're not going to get your way. But to me, it's a pretty equal opportunity for everyone to at least have their say and become a part of something. How about you guys? What does a DAC represent to you guys? Maybe that's a good question, because I think you've all been, part of one or in one or interested in one or heading one up or something like that.
I mean, I guess I'll go next. I've been, trying to help with EOS DAC for, gosh, I don't know, a couple of years now. I'm trying to be a community-owned block producer on EOS.io networks and a DAC enabler. And we've kind of toyed around with the definition of what do we think a DAC is over the years. And I like the idea of it's a group of people with a shared goal. Decentralized autonomous community is a group of people with a shared goal. The decentralized just means there's no single point of failure. Autonomous means basically everything that happens within the group is transparent as far as like it's on chain, what the rules are of how the group interacts. How do they vote for administrators or custodians? How do they decide on funding? How do they figure out, which work gets done and how it gets paid, that kind of stuff. All those rules are transparent and completely auditable. Like everyone can look at how things work. And then the C or the O, if it's a DAC or a DAO, can mean all kinds of things. Consortia, community, company, corporation, or organization. So that's what I think about. It's just a group of people with a shared goal. And so why I get excited about it is it applies to everything. I mean, it literally applies to anything from an HOA to a club to a government, like you said, to a nonprofit, to a corporation or organization. Anybody that wants to have a tribe, you get a group of people together and say, sweet, we got a group of people together. We all want to do something. We have, like you said, a shared vision, a shared perspective on the world. What are we going to do together and how are we going to do it? And it's like, generally more, when you have a group of people together, they can get more done than just one individual. And that's really important, right? The individual alone is just, an island, but you get a group of people together, it's like they become more than the sum of their parts. And so you have to then eventually go, okay, how do you make agreements? And the traditional way is whoever has the guns makes the rules, or the plutocracy, whoever, the golden rule of whoever has the gold makes the rules. And DACs and DAOs, I think, create a mechanism for alternative ways of exploring governance. Now, you actually said something interesting about everybody gets an equal say. We could maybe, I'd love to talk about that too. I actually, I did a blog post just this couple of days ago, I think, or maybe it was Monday, over on Leo Finance about token weight and token-based governance voting. And I have probably an unpopular opinion that I don't think everybody's voice is the same in some situations. Like, I don't want the gardener having the same say as the heart surgeon on like my heart health and like what I need to do if I'm going to die, right? Like, there is different experience, expertise, insight, whatever. And I want to be able to proxy my vote to different people in the community who have more weight than I do on different, categories and topics in a way that is in the best interest of a Nash equilibrium benefiting everybody, right? And there are people, there's a concept of skin in the game. If you don't show up and do the work, you don't have any financial investment, you don't have any risk that you've put out there, like your vote is worthless in a lot of ways compared to somebody who's putting in the work, showing up every day, like putting their money at risk, whatever it ends up being. So there's some really complicated deals, but that's what I love about DACs and DAOs. It allows for a ton of experimentation. And most importantly for me personally, it's a mechanism for coming to consensus without violence. It's not like whoever has all the guns and aircraft carriers gets to determine what the rules are. So anyway, that's my brief intro to why I'm excited about DACs. And I'll say also, I was really early about Bitcoin, like January 2013, and everyone was like, this is crazy, fake internet money, what are you talking about? But I knew I was right. I was just really, really early. I feel the same way about DACs and DAOs. I'm like super passionate about it. I really think it's important. I think it's going to shape the future of humanity. But I'm like so early about it. People are like, what? We got Bitcoin. We don't need DACs and DAOs. I want to read that article, by the way.
I totally can't tell about your passion. But I think like it's interesting what you said there, because maybe we come back to that too. But like I always thought like on the topic of like, you gave the analogy of a heart surgeon and a gardener, but even like, there's many people that are comprised within the DAC that will have different jobs or different skill sets, right? Like even on this panel, like if we were to make it, I don't know, an NFT now, like we all have different things that we could do, right? And I think like a lot of times people maybe confuse the fact that people just vote up their friends for actually understanding what these people are doing. Because like if you look at like some of the DACs that I've been a part of, right, like there's no way I can weigh in on like the technical stuff, right? Like I'm not a designer, I'm not a coder, right? So basically when they say, okay, well, we need somebody to sign this contract, It's like, okay, tell me what this contract does, right? Everyone who's technical on the DAC, tell me what it does, and then if I understand it, and there's no major disagreements, then I'm going to go and I'm going to sign it, right? Like, because I think that's one of the powerful things about the DAC is that you can have people who are running different parts of the project and getting together and doing that. So yeah, let's definitely come back to that. Maybe let's hit up Lisa and Michael first about what a DAC is to them. I think you're on mute, Lisa, or Michael, who wants to go first? Okay. Left is Lisa, right is Michael. Rock, scissors, paper, 1, 2, 3. Up, tie, 1, 2, 3. Up, tie, 1, 2, 3. Up. Right.
All right. So I guess, and a lot of what Luke said, being blockchain aficionados, I guess, we love the concept of, immutable and on chain and the public for all to see. And then, of course, building on like the EOSIO platform, it really kind of allowed, especially with permissions and accounts and stuff, to really kind of flesh out some of that DAC structure. And it gives DACs the ability. So like you say, okay, everybody votes in one thing or has weigh in on one thing with equal weight. And then maybe, Luke's going into surgery. Yeah, we're not going to have the DAC, be equal tokens on that. All the doctors are going to have, even only allowing the doctors to vote, which is something, the community decides on, or giving somebody a little more weight or whatever framework you want. You can really just build those layers and fractionalize it out. And then, the framework just kind of keeps going. And if anybody has any disputes or anything, it's all on chain. So I think it's ripe for, that government, group management even, I don't even want to say government, but just decisions and collective opinions. Lisa, your turn.
Okay, I just wanted to see if Jimmy wanted to say something, but I wanted to hear what you guys said before I responded, because I'm the new kid in this club.
Well, maybe, but I'm sorry. I'm just trying not, because I know sometimes your internet is laggy, so I'm trying to give you space so that I don't cut you off over and over and over again. Sorry about that.
It's okay. No problem. No problem. You're welcome to. So to me, a DAC is a community, and it's a well-run community. And I don't mean perfection. I mean that it can exist and thrive and add value to the members of the community. I didn't realize that entirely when I started being exposed to DAC. I think what people think mostly about DACs or talk mostly about is the technology, because the technology is so innovative and it enables this community to have more equitable rewards, as Max would say. And that is a big deal. But once one gets into it, the bigger deal is that we have communities of, like Luke said, shared goals, shared vision, and also, as Max would say, shared values. I'm representing him since he's not here today. But that being said, the community is waiting there for you once you come in to learn about that technology and interact with it. And that's how I know all of you. And, that's how we're able to have an event together to discuss these topics all week long. So I think that community is actually a very old concept in many ways, but in a lot of ways it's also very new, because even though, through nonprofit organizations and clubs and things like that, local groups, for years they have existed, but now more than ever, communities are emerging based on interests and likes. There's probably many people to credit for that along the way in the back, but now that communities are gathering, it's more important than ever to have ways for these communities to operate, for the community managers to be able to share information and gather information, and for the people involved to be able to think of what would add value and discuss it. And for those people who can, you know, time is a scarce resource for many people in many ways. And that's, you know, some people have more time than others to contribute to things. Some people get so passionate about an idea, even though they don't have the time, they still do it. You know, so having all these different people that come together with these different skills and expertise and availability and willingness, like, believe it or not, you know, in the Crown community, have one of the best internet. So, you know, there's all types, and that really makes for a wonderful, diverse experience. You know, people all over the world have different ways of communicating and interacting, different things they value, different ways to approach things. And, you know, by having ways to get together, it makes a big difference in our ability to think about, you know, how to create solutions or serve or create experiences for different people in the community. So, you know, I think that's the essence of the DAC is really everything that comes out because of that community. And I think historically the technology that has enabled those communities to empower themselves.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there as well. Like, one of the best parts about, you know, decentralized blockchain technology for me is, like you said, the fact that, you know, people that wouldn't generally be able to have a say or be able to get loans or be able to, you know, interact with the mainstream financial world. Tons of other examples as well. You know, like art is a big one for me because of, you know, what the projects that we work at for, like selling your art, selling your craft in the form of NFTs, right? Decentralized finance, which is why Ethereum annoys me so much. Like, I have no qualms with, you know, all the great things about Ethereum, but in terms of, you know, paying absorbently high, like transaction costs, like, it's not workable. And I think where blockchain shines is that ability for people that are beyond the system of the mainstream in a big way to be able to participate in things like that. So I think you hit on a really big point there, right? Like, you do allow people to come together from all over different parts of the world and kind of, I mean, a lot of times in the traditional world, yeah, Duane might join this, and I always like talking to him because I feel like, you know, we kind of have a similar idea, but a lot of times in the traditional world, you have these major companies that go into, like, you know, various areas of the world, and they say, no, you have to do things this way. And it essentially destroys their whole ecosystem, or destroys their whole governance model, or it destroys their all of these things. So I think having a DAC in place allows people from various parts of the world to, like, communicate and understand and do that sort of stuff. So I want to take a little bit of break, if it's okay, because I want to, well, if this works, this is what I want to do. Can I do it? Yes, I can. Sweet. We always do this, and I actually don't really have access to the cathedral, because one time at band camp, one time I went into the cathedral and I tried to take a sign out of it, and I accidentally smashed one of Corey's boxes, and he, like, banned me from, like, the cathedral for life.
But this is a great example of, like, governance stuff, right? It's like, you are a core pillar to this community, and then, but it's like, it's also Corey's baby, right? Like, he built this thing. He's a whole community around this cathedral for, like, what, years now, right? So it's like,
I think the cathedral DAC would have voted to revoke Jimmy's rights as well. So,
but it's like, it's very interesting, right? It's like, we come into these situations where it's like, okay, how do we protect what we value? And that's what I think DACs are really about. Like, our tribes, our communities, we have to protect what we value. And how do we do that without being like, I'm going to threaten you with violence. You know, like, can we protect what we value without going there and saying, okay, these are rules. Those who have competence to follow the rules. Nothing against you, Jimmy, but like, you know, who have the technical expertise. We don't let anybody mess with, you know, EOS USA's Michael's servers, right? Like, Michael is the guy who messes with. You want to have a Hyperion cluster. It's like, he's going to be the guy that's going to make sure that thing runs, right? He's not going to let anybody just show up and be like, I want to try it out. What does this key do? You know, and like, that's going to ruin a lot of people's expectations of the excellent service they provide. So it's like, how do we protect what we value? Because like, and I haven't yet, but I want to read Dan Lermer's book on unequal, you know, this humans, like this, like we all have this different role to play, like you said earlier. You know, we have these different jobs, these different things that we're good at. And that impacts, you know, what can we do? So it's like, I think this is super fun that, you know, here's a real example of this, like, well, I say real, but it's on a virtual world. You know what I mean? Anyway, enough rambling. Go ahead. I'm
no, but I mean, to be fair, like I actually had like way more power than I deserved, because I had power over the whole world just because that was the way that it got set up. And like, I didn't get restricted like to my own like little zone. So, and yeah, so. Like, there is a backstory to that. Anyway, we're gonna do it this way because
Hey, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I just want to mention the other day that Corey knocked something out in the cathedral just to make you feel better, but true story.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think the DAC should ban his permissions. All those in favor, voice your opinion.
Fair enough. So this is the land that I've been working on. This is the Generate EOS plot. And as you can see, that Generate EOS symbol is actually a mountain in the middle of the ocean.
That is freaking amazing, by the way.
So it's actually built up. So it's got like, you know, it's a weird mountain, but there's going to be a harbor and stuff in there. And you can see all the lights underground. There's like some farms and some cool, you know, stuff under there.
Look at all of those sea lanterns.
When I first got this plot, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? Because like, there's basically this. There's basically this island that was on it, like this very island, and you can see that the lights going around the outside. This is the center of the community plot. So everything else was underwater. So I'm like, okay, I'm totally using creative mode because like there's no way I'm going to be able to, you know, breathe underwater. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, okay, I wonder how deep it is. So like I just kind of like built this thing here, and it goes all the way to the bottom actually of the sea, just to see how high it was. And so what we're going to do actually.
Just so you know, you saved yourself the effort. If you hit F3, it would have told you exactly how high it is.
Yeah, I was a noob, man. Anyway, we're going to go here, and we're going to put up some gratitudes. Your guys' gratitudes are going to be on this, like, you know, glass wall that has zero meaning other than to tell me how high the ocean floor is. And I could maybe potentially stand on it if a tsunami comes. And I want to put the gratitudes here in Generate EOS land, because here's where I have permissions and nobody else does. So, yeah. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, and I'm super, super grateful and I have gratitude for solving software problems. I've been battling a software thing for this FIO groups thing I've been playing with that I'll demonstrate later today on the DACATHon, and I got it working late last night after like 5 hours straight of battling with this software issue. So just like grateful to perseverance and like figuring stuff out.
Thankful for finding the mundane detail, right?
Yes. Some decimal point. Yeah. Grateful for solving software problems. I know that's random, but that's where I'm at. Oh, we got Duane in the chat. Awesome.
I hope he's going to join.
I'm about to say, bring his smiling face up in here.
Okay. I'm just going to say LS, Luke Stokes. Luke S, because it doesn't fit. Sorry, Luke.
No, that works for me. I guess we got Duane backstage. If you know how to bring him up stage, we can bring him in.
Yeah, let me do that. Let me just finish this. And oh, wait. Maybe I can put it there.
Speaking of a software issue.
This might be a problem between the keyboard and the chair.
Pebkek. Pebkek. It's always a pebkek. Computers always do exactly what we tell them to. That's the problem.
This is true.
Okay, okay, back to the game. What happened? Well, that didn't work. Okay.
You got to put some light on it.
Wow.
Well, I'm gonna do that in a minute. But I
Duane,
mean,
how is Costa Rica? This background picture I have is actually a picture from Costa Rica.
It's home.
Are those the crickets in the background?
You could just say fixing bugs if you want, if that gives you more room.
Now I know why Corey's relegated to this right.
Aw.
I'm kind of a perfectionist, so that's part of the problem. Because like, yeah, okay, there, got you, Luke. Okay, who's next? Who wants to go next? And
I'll go. I'm thankful for
I'm
Jenna
grateful
Rios.
for community managers. Go ahead.
okay, you're thankful for Jen or EOS, Michael?
Yeah, we've started working a lot together over the past, I don't know, probably 6-12 months. We've really kind of ramped things up with a lot of the services y'all have, and y'all have helped us out a lot in a lot of the different spaces. So we're thankful for you and all of your crew.
That's awesome. I really like to hear that, actually.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Who else is up? I think you said something,
I'm
Lisa,
grateful for community managers. And thank you to AJ, who's our community manager at DACATHON this year.
Okay. All right, great. Who else? Duane, you're new around these parts today. I'm grateful for this amazing DAC panel. P-A-N-N-E-L. P-A-N-E-L. How do you spell panel? P-A-N-N-E-L.
Yeah. No, just one N.
What was that? Just one? Oh.
Yeah.
Amazing DAC. SEO, discussion panel.
One N.
B.
Spell check on signs.
I know, we need one of those.
Yeah.
And Duane, what do you got?
I'm grateful for Luke Stokes.
That feels a little weird.
Well, it's really huge. Back in the Go No Go launch for the EOS chain, June of 2018, we were in San Francisco, and I didn't know Luke. I didn't know about him at all. And I saw this passionate person at the front of the stage explaining the importance of DACs and DAOs, and gave me shivers. It's what motivated me to be active in the space, and I instantly got it. I was like, "Are you kidding me? That this, before then we signed up as a block producer. We wanted to support EOS." But what really made me active in the space was that talk in front of all the early adopters and block producers. So without that talk, yeah, it changed my life, that first introduction to DACs and DAOs. And it was more than just a talk. It was very controversial because this was the first time that, I saw people. It wasn't well received. Let's put it that way. It was almost like people saying, "Well, you're giving people equity in your little DAC and DAO, isn't that vote buying?" And it was just to see the passion, and also, yeah, a lot of people didn't get it. Right? They just saw, hey, this block producer is trying to game the system by giving equity to its community members, and how does that really help the whole ecosystem? Does it? That just helps EOS DAC. And I got it instantly. It was, it was life-changing. And to further why I'm grateful for Luke Stokes, we were so passionate about creating a DAC before, almost the cart before the horse. I should remind Max Infeld that we definitely did the cart before the horse. We didn't have the technology or the information to create our own DAC. So we contacted Luke and said, we're going to come visit you. We're going to come down to Puerto Rico because we really need your help. And he's like, sure, I'll give you guys a hand. And we launched, the second DAC on EOS, Crown DAC, with Luke's help. And we all knew that maybe the technology wasn't ready, maybe the community wasn't ready, and he was willing to put his, puts a lot of their technology at risk to give us a chance, right? And I'm not sure if there was really consensus even in his own team of saying, hey, we're ready to allow other communities to do this. So he did come with a disclaimer going, guys, like this is beta. We don't know if all the things are going to work. Like this might cause your community.
It was like pre-alpha.
Yeah, alpha. This might cause your community a lot of, and we basically said, no, Luke, this is exactly why we're doing this. We're doing this as an experiment. We're willing to risk the heartache and and even take flack from the community at whole that we're doing something that maybe is not ready. Maybe the community is not ready. We're here to put ourselves as the experiment. And, it left a lasting impression of Puerto Rico. That was where our DAC was born. So the emotional, the emotions and all of that, like we taped our call, and I think you can just see the stress in all of us. And then Luke's like, well, you have to press the button here. You guys have to do this. And all of a sudden, Duane, you got to do these key pairs. I'm like, me? I'm just supporting this. No, you're an active community member. You have to. Yeah. Anyways, the whole process, we wouldn't be here, or I wouldn't be here, and Crown DAC wouldn't be here for people having the balls to stand up for what they believe in, even if it didn't meet consensus at the time. And grateful is, to say I'm grateful. I'm extremely grateful. So there's my little gratitude. And I can't stop. I can't stop at that. Luke, it was a custodian is a custodian. And obviously, very, very busy, but it's not that we're finding financial wealth through a Crown DAC, but it's people like Luke, they'll jump into our call and express exactly what I'm expressing, going, you guys, I love you. Keep going. I really appreciate your hard work. You guys always show up. And out of anything that we're doing in this community, that's what Crown's about. It's about appreciating these people, bringing in new people that all of a sudden have a bunch of numbers in a wall for the first time and have a big emotional response. So those little affirmations and gratitudes along the way is what keeps the community going and pumps you up and goes, yeah, we are doing something good here, right? Because you don't hear that a lot. You hear when things are going wrong, everybody, your telegram's full of, the mistakes you made, and there's not enough times where people give you a little pat in the back. And, we feel we're strong. We don't need it. Hey, we're going to do this regardless, but it is what keeps you going. So yeah.
And I so appreciate that, Duane, because that could have gone the other way. It could have been like, so Luke gave this talk, and I literally blame him for the last 2 years of my life. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword, right? It's like all the craziness of the last 2 years, the passion with EOS DAC, building DACs and DAOs. It's like, it's that classic graph, that people think success, you start here and you end here and you're like, yeah, it's this nice straight line, but it's like all over the place. And then you finally are like, oh yeah, we somehow got here, but geez, that was not what I expected. But Duane, sincere thank you. That was beautiful and amazing. And I know you well enough to know that you sincerely mean that. And that's why that's so important to me. I love to hear that when I put in the emotional effort to get up on stage and be at a talk, I always like beforehand, I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't like this stress and everything. And I hate prepping and slides and all that. But then when I hear like, hey, this actually influenced somebody in a positive way, they're not like, oh man, I got inspired and then I wasted 2 years of my life. But in a positive way, I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was really heartfelt speech, I thought, as well. And I've actually never been to a crypto like live event, like a live conference. Like I've seen stuff online, so I can only imagine how much more riled up you must get as opposed to like sitting in your living room or on your balcony when there's people around you that get excited and see the value in what the speaker is saying and being able to, even as a presenter, to interact with the audience. So I'm gonna
be honest, the last crypto event I went to was out in Vegas and I don't really remember a lot of it. Good times though, good times.
I'm gonna be nice to you today, Michael. I promise. There must have been one hell of a DAC show at the last crypto conference. Yeah, fair enough. Well, gratitude's out of the way. Well, not out of the way, but you know what I mean. We want to dive in, I guess, to some higher level. Sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
Jimmy, let's hear Duane's definition of a DAC.
Oh yeah, we didn't get that because he joined late. Yeah, so Duane, before you joined, everyone gave like a kind of what DAC meant to them. So if you might give that. Good call, Lisa. Sorry, thank you.
The simplest form. Well, I'm going to start what's an MSIG. It's kind of the precursor or what kind of forms the back end of a DAC. And a DAC can simply mean protecting your own WAX or EOS account, right? So, a simple DAC could be putting on my family members onto my custodial wallet as a backup, right? So it could be, it's not what's traditionally thought of a DAC. The next steps of that, MSIG would be us voting or proposing something. But at the simplest, for someone thinking, well, I don't really need a DAC. Well, the back end technical part of a DAC is a multi-sig, where instead of me just having one pair of keys, I could add someone else's, pair of keys to my account. And then if you extend that we want to do more with my account than just say protect it, that we have 2 of 3 of those keys to to change a key more, instead of just being a security practice. It's then controlling an account that we share the assets. So if it's say on WAX and we have a custodial wallet, it's us protecting the funds of that account, so not one actor can just take all the funds at its simplest, right? Or once again, that safety. If there's a little collective that we have some NFTs in account, what happens if God forbid someone passes away and we have this community that is relying on us to get those assets out? That is a DAC. Now, some of the DAC tools that come after that is, well, how about we need some decision making where we have those people part of the account that want to vote on other things. In CrownDAC, through DAC factory, the other options were we have a community fund, and now we're asking the members to see who's the best custodians to hold those funds or decide where those funds go. So what that DAC does is, depending on the time period the custodians are renewed, it's getting a signal from the community of who they trust with those funds. So instead of us manually changing, the permissions on the account, the DAC updates those keys automatically and says, hey, if you have 9 custodians during this election period for the last 28 days, in the case of Krownlandia, the community has voted with their token weight to say, hey, Duane hasn't showed up for 2 months. Because of that, our proposals haven't gone through, but we see, we see someone else. We see Lisa has been really active. Let's vote her in. She's really speaking for the community a bit more. So it's just a way for a community to signal who they trust with community funds. And then our job is really to, come together as a group. We've decided what we want to do. We've said, hey, these custodians, we're going to meet every week. I think I don't really recall Max Infeld or myself missing a community meeting on Thursdays for the last 2.5 years. So we just have an open call where the community at large can come in and they can suggest fun, engaging activities they'd like to use Crown for. So they put together a proposal. We kind of make sure that we know these people. So if someone shows up to, on a Zoom call and we, they've been active in the community, if you look at the list of proposals that we've given out, we've given Crown out, we're pretty open to almost any engaging, fun activity, if we know the people. So someone shows up, and then it's our job as the custodians to put that proposal into the software. And then it takes a threshold of so many of the custodians to vote it to get those funds out to that person. And there's other tools that the DAC could provide, but that's kind of the tool set we've used it for. Protect the assets, have more than just one person that's responsible for the pool of funds, and then get those funds out to the community. So if you bring this to the real world, if it was a company that was in charge of some funds, it could just be a safety measure of saying, hey, I if something happens to me, if I'm just take off to Costa Rica and never show up again, and I'm the only person in charge of these funds, geez, that's not a really good resilient system, right? There should be some other people, that have access to those funds. And then beyond that, it's I guess the highest level. When I first heard Luke's talk, I thought, wow, this is going to change the world, because what do these big companies do? Say a big brand, they have this marketing budget of millions of dollars, and a lot of their profit goes into or revenue goes into pretending they know what their customers want. And then on the other side, they use that, so-called knowledge to push marketing at people to shove it down their throats of, this is what you want. And there's a lot of money there. And I see the companies that are going to take over in the future will take all that money, engage the community, and just ask them, what do you want? And they would give that pool of money to the community, first maybe to reward them for engagement, to say, hey, give us your feedback. And then they'd give it to that community of saying, do what you want. It would remove whole marketing departments if you gave those funds to that end consumer, and it would have the longevity of a cooperative, right? It would have the longevity that my customer is part of the company. And then who else are the really important stakeholders in that company? Probably the workers probably know a lot more than the CEO of how, the company could be efficient and which direction it goes. So it's bringing all those stakeholders and giving them a more equitable share. And, you know, in today's day and age, can you imagine if Amazon, you know, was a DAC, right? We'd have a lot more efficiency. We'd probably not see one man's worth more than 99% of everybody else. You'd maybe have a more efficient machine. It'd be interesting to see what that community would want. Would they just want a dividend and cash back? Would they want to do something meaningful in that business to market? Would they? So it would bring efficiency and equity to all shareholders. Yeah.
I never heard Luke's talk, but I don't know if I need to. That was a pretty amazing talk there by you too, Duane. I'm gonna go back and listen to Luke's talk because I do really want to hear that. But like that was interesting. Michael, can you back the bus up because I want to throw some people under it? Because I think you brought up a really good point here. Yeah, like imagine when you were talking, I was thinking, what was that Canadian exchange that shut down? Imagine if that was a DAC. That guy just basically disappeared. Nobody really know where he went. The other one is Block One. I mean, let's not throw too much shade, but imagine if Block One was a DAC, right? Like what I know somebody's smiling about that, but like imagine, right? Like and finally, I just want to bring up so I have been parts of various DACs and I've left, not because of any issues. Like I'm still like on my profile is still there. I just kind of let other people take the lead because I was busy. As you do. And I'm an active member of a couple of DACs right now, not using EOS DAC software, actually using DAClify, which is a different kind of thing. If we have time, we can talk about it later because I think that's an interesting parallel. Even though there are some issues, there's good points and bad points to everything. But the previous DACs that I was using, I remember we were using the EOS DAC software for a lot of things, but it was a monumental event actually when the keys actually got turned over to DAC ownership. A lot of these projects, I think, that are being built, like in order to bootstrap them, it's really difficult to go through the signing processes when you have to upgrade the contracts and stuff. Especially if something's being built out. I kind of like to hear your take, especially on this, Luke, because I know like you do a lot of coding and stuff like that, right? So like to get even 15 signatures or 12 signatures or even 9 signatures, if you've got 1 or 2 coders, it's really problematic, right? So usually when the coding is finished recently as well, a lot of these projects are doing like security audits with various things, especially in the EOS.io space. Or like Ethereum, I think they do it as well, but like more so protections for financial and other risk areas. But I remember like there's a few projects that like have actually made like announcements about like turning the keys over to DAC control. And this is like a really huge thing, right? Because this no longer means that one person, like even if it's a DAC, like in name, if those keys aren't turned over to the DAC, this no longer means that one person, like you say, can just walk away from money or just shut down the code or just like, destroy the whole project, right? So, so I was kind of curious, like, maybe you have something to comment on that, Luke, because I know you're more on the coding end of me, like,
Yeah, no, I would love to. I've got to go to a budget committee meeting in 10 minutes for FIO. FIO is a DAC. We're running as a decentralized autonomous consortia. We've got a steering committee. The board of directors, they are on a multi-sig to manage funds. So like, monthly, if as I pay out the worker proposals, there's a process where, as long as I'm following the budget, I request release funds, and we've got a 5 of 7 multi-sig, and they release funds so that I can, pay people that are doing great work with active proposals. And we've got a steering committee kind of within the group of people that are doing the day-to-day, and I would love to see, we actually have our first election coming up April 15th for the board. So basically this is FIO token holders can then, sending a FIO request, they can say, yeah, this is someone I'd like to vote for. And then that's kind of like a straw poll, and the current board members will then use that to elect, and this follows Cayman law because it is a Cayman nonprofit organization. So we have all these but I would love eventually to have a more active board that's like a custodian board on a DAC that's constantly involved in different decision-making, multi-sigging decisions to pay people and things like that. So it's, further distributing the governance weight to more people. That said, I've also learned a lot from EOS DAC in the last 2 years. I've learned a lot from, having strong opinions about something and disagreeing with, maybe a certain technical perspective or a certain technical approach. You mentioned DACify. It's, you go to their website, it's really clear. It's like centralized APIs. That was something that it mentions that EOS DAC has, and that was a technology decision that I didn't personally agree with. And I think it's come to show a little bit more point of centralized failure, potential for centralized failure that I hope to avoid in a DAC DAO model. We've had certain times where the systems haven't worked well because there's very few people who technically understand kind of how to do that. And it's very challenging to get enough people involved when the DAC isn't functioning well to pay people and stuff. So like this need for making sure you don't have these central points of failure, especially technological ones, where only a small number of people understand how to, fix things. And then two, and this is the more challenging one for me, is recognizing the need for a bit of hierarchy. There's this thing called biomimicry, where you build technology that mimics what you see in nature, because like there's been millions of years of evolution that have tried those systems out and they work fairly well. I had a friend of mine who loves to troll back and forth with me on Twitter who was like, nah, nature's bad. Like it wants you to like reproduce and be dead by 30, and it was like, I was like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean like systems that have been through evolutionary stable strategy, environments, and they work. And often those systems have a form of hierarchy where everyone has their role, right? Like my body functions well because the brain is a coordinator, for everything that's going on. And sometimes I've been hearing this more and more, that certain DACs kind of need a president, or they need a managing director, or they need, somebody to be like, look, I'm going to cast the vision. Here's what we're all going to do. And let's get on board, and the idea being, as long as that person can be quickly and easily replaced, if the community is like, dude, you become a dictator, you're no longer benefiting all of us, let's do a multi-sig and boot you out. As long as that can happen quickly and easily. And we've seen this with EOS mainnet. Dan Larimer just recently is posting on eoscommunity.org, and he's getting all these people excited because he's got some new governance proposals, and all of a sudden there's like life in EOS. All the people that are literally in it for the technology because the token has just been like rough are excited again. And I think that's because we as humans were this tribal species that's just used to this tribal leader, right? And again, it rubs me the wrong way. I don't like it. I want flat. I want, holacracy. I want everybody involved. And yet I'm seeing this again and again, where it's like, am I fighting nature? Am I fighting the way humans want to interact with other humans? Like so many people want a leader to take responsibility. The buck stops with them. Somebody just make a decision so we can move forward, even if it's the wrong one. We got to get new data so we can not, halt the system. And so it's been challenging to recognize, like, okay, how do we do this where we make it as flat as possible, but we also have this visionary leadership, we have this direction, and what does that look like? And I reluctantly, in some ways, I'm in that position with FIO Protocol. Absolutely love it. It's an amazing product. But I started part-time because I was like, I don't want another job. I sold my business after 10 years. Like I didn't want a job, and I have a job now. Like I'm working full-time on this because I'm passionate about it, and we got to make crypto easier for everybody. But I recognize too, it's like that sacrifice to be like, yeah, I could just not show up. And this is why I love, Lisa, Duane, everyone at Krownlandia. It's like, I am a custodian, but I haven't been involved. So I'm probably not a custodian anymore, or nor should I be, because I just don't put in the time and effort and other people do. And it's that idea that like, does that mean I care less about them? No, it's amazing. It's awesome what they've always been doing. They always show up. But it's that idea of like, if the leadership can just be like, well, whatever, this is boring now, or I can make more money over here now, and they just kind of bail. Like ideally we have systems in place where that's okay. And we have to create even more value in what we're building so that we attract those people to continue to provide leadership, continue to provide engagement and be, involved. So I know I'm throwing out a whole bunch of details here, and I got to go in just a few minutes, but you're exactly right, Jimmy. Like we got to make this stuff simple and easy. What I'm presenting on later today, I'm literally like, I apologize, but I've been writing code as I'm like, on the show here. And I'm cleaning it up a little bit. And I've got like a basic, like if you boil it down to the most basic, I love how Duane said MSIG, a multi-signature smart contract where you can maintain funds, maintain decision-making within a group of elected leaders, admins. I think that's like the core. And that's essentially what I built using, and again, I'm happy to talk about it. Lisa will know exactly what time it's at. It's later, it's in my calendar at some point today. But it's the idea that like a group can be identified by a FIO domain. And a FIO domain is a private thing. Only the owner can mint addresses, NFTs on that domain. So we could create a very simple concept of give somebody a group domain, and then they're the owner, they're the admin because they created it, right? And then they could have other people apply, and then they have an election. And then from that election, you have a new multi-sig that's created for the group owner of the domain. And now you've got like a multi-sig there, and you can start putting funds in that situation. And that multi-sig approves every member that's like, hey, I want to be part of the group. And that member has to like prepay for their FIO address. So there's some skin in the game. Like you want to have, an address at this specific group domain that identifies to the whole world you're part of this community. Well, we have to approve that. We have to look at your bio and like, what are you about, And so I'm really excited about, because I feel like it's boiling down the DAC concepts to the most basic level. And it was like, I don't know, 1 a.m. last night, and I sent it off to Lisa and Max, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is just what we need. So I thank you, Lisa, for that encouragement. Max not on the show, but I know I would thank him as well. Like, because I feel like there are people who get this. Duane obviously got it a couple years ago, and it impacted, changed his life, as he said. So I do think these things are important, and I want to make them simple, right? We got to make this technology redundant, reliable, basic, simple, like so anybody can jump in and help improve it and make changes. And so anyway, tune in later today. Hopefully I'll have something cool to show related to that. And again, I just super appreciate all you guys, but I got to bail out. And but thank you for all of this, and for the reminder that the hard work we're doing matters to some people.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I wanted to just throw one thing in there. We're using a use case of a group of people controlling funds. There could be the other use case where a group of techies are using this to push code. You can use this to actually update whole autonomous software. So if you look at things that want to last longer than us, sure, sending wealth to a community through tokens is fantastic. But, we're not maybe seeing the bigger scope of this, where we want some of these back-end autonomous softwares working. And if we had, obviously, there has to be some incentive for those techs to be working on this. But that's to have good systems last generations. That could also a group of people could just have something being automated to keep a piece of software going for a long time as well. Just a different use case.
That's awesome. I love you guys. Take care. Have a good one.
So it was great to have Luke on here. But if you guys are cool, I'd like to continue this a little bit more. Michael always points out that we're coming up to an hour, but as my official recent co-host on this channel, what do you think, Michael? You want to dive a little bit deeper? Do you got time for that? Do you guys got time for that?
We can. I might need to give some coffee back, but yeah, we can definitely hang out a little while. I'm multitasking, so.
Yeah, you can just get up and go get coffee. You don't have to ask permission.
Yeah, there you go. Can the pet please go be let outside to go to the potty without getting swacked in the head with a roll of newspaper? So
yeah, the little bit of backstory there. You're not really the pet, but okay, fair enough. I thought
I'm going with it. I'm gonna be cat lawyer. I'm gonna be cat IT guy.
You did put a pig in a roller coaster, so I don't know. But anyway,
he got in on his own accord, for the record.
So, Duane, I'm super happy to have you here. I wasn't sure if you're going to show up or not, because I know the time is a little bit strange for you. But as I mentioned, when everyone was giving their introductions, and thank you, Lisa, again, because I totally, I had my agenda and I totally forgot that he hadn't brought that up. So good call. But yeah, I wanted to I think it's interesting for me because I know you're kind of into permaculture and ecosystem design management, as well as blockchain. And I think it's kind of if you think about it, communities that would self-organize or countries or regions that would self-organize on, say, something as important, for example, as allowing a multi-billion-dollar company to come in and use their land as a testing ground for herbicides and pesticides, right? It doesn't always, you brought up the coding aspect, right? Luke brought up the financial aspect. I think I would love to see governance on DACs as well. It gets a little bit problematic, and I'm not really sure, maybe a little later we can go into what DAClify offers, because I think that's an important distinction to make. And again, it's not finished. It works. It's a great project, but like it's not nearly as established as EOS DAC, right? But I think it offers some potential advantages that I'd like to talk about as well. But like other than that, like and Lisa as well, please chip in as well. Like what are some like out those three things? What are some other aspects that like the real world could use DACs for? Just like brainstorming session, quick, shoot them out. What do you got? Like, I don't think that there's anything that could be wrong here, to be honest.
Well, fractionalizing land. I think I'm not sure about the stats in Costa Rica, but the average age of a farmer in Canada is 65. I don't see the transition plan to have, Canada, at least where I'm from, the plains of Canada, grows something like 2/3 of the world's wheat, 90% of the world's mustard. It's a big powerhouse. We are a very small population. So, saying eat locally, yes, we take this much of a dent in all that production. But what would incentivize someone to have a life full of debt, burden, risk, and stress? I don't see another way except sharing that through sort of a DAC-like model. How would my transition plan be if I had some land? Well, you'd find like-minded people that said, you know what, I'd love nothing more to have some land, but I can't afford it. I can't afford the equipment. So enabling people on what they're passionate about and allowing them some equity in that would be great. But that's only part of the solution. The other part of the solution is people stepping up as, a DAC-like, or just DAC might be confusing. Let's just call it a cooperative or group, right? That has shares in a whole. I'd like nothing more. Well, I'll even back up more. Community-supported agriculture. It started, in my mind, by someone having incredible practices that created such high sugar content in their food, doing biodynamic agriculture, that when people bought this, they said, "Can I prepay for that? I want some of this. This is the best stuff I want. How can I support that farmer? And I want to prepay for next year's crop." And now it's turned into people using that model saying, hey, sharing the risk for me. I don't have cash as a farmer until the fall. If you really like what you see, the risk you're going to take is I'm not sure how all these different vegetables are going to produce. So you're going to get a random box of stuff. So you're going to take the risk of not being able to select exactly what you want. But I'm going to guarantee you that it's fresh. You're supporting me. And hopefully we get back to those really good practices that made this really high nutritious food. Well, that's sort of a DAC-like model, right? So if we can get consumers to signal what they want in advance so we know what to produce, and then the next step would be this DAC. Well, maybe I am part of that farm to get me even bought in a little bit more. Maybe that NFT that I'm getting as a membership box gives me a little share. So now I'm thinking a little bit more of like, instead of just being a consumer of that food, it's like, wow, how can I help this guy out so that, we win. What are his needs? So maybe you'd have some meetings every week saying, well, what I need is I don't need any more radishes. I want you to produce more potatoes. And the farmer's like, well, I could do that, but I can't, handle all the weeding. And it would be just more an equitable model of the consumers signaling to the farmer what he wants, the farmer signaling back. And if there's any profit there, which is funny, profit in farming, but if there was something left over, we could share it amongst ourselves, or we could decide that maybe we need a bit more marketing, and someone's going to take up an active role and help that farmer, and a little bit of the pool of funds would go to marketing. So I think it just builds resiliency, because these supply chains are really fragile, because we're disconnected from the CEO, from the worker, from that land. So, these models, you have a little bit more stake in the game. And if we look at the models that we want to last longer, to be more resilient, I can't think of a better model than agriculture. Like, we all have one thing in common. We're breathing and eating. Like, we should know what we like, So if we signaled that back to the community and had some stake in it, for one thing, that middleman that usually takes all the profit because he's lending money to these people to do things, that money would be freed up for us to make better decisions. There'd be maybe more education, so we're not, thinking we need to do things like in traditional agriculture. The guy that's the big company that's buying the grain from the farmer is giving him money to plant the crop, and then is saying, well, you have to use my way of management. You have to buy the chemicals and fertilizer. So they're in a trap because the person that's buying and giving him money is selling him everything, and they just leave him a little bit of margin in the middle. So we can change systems by giving more equity to all shareholders. And agriculture is a tough use case. There's easier ones. We're dealing with digital NFTs where things are already on the blockchain. The pool of funds is already digital. We can be, just decentralized and have worldwide groups of people. We don't have to be terrestrial. But I'm just picking, how could you do this in a community? And people watching, I think, is what kind of groups are you part of right now? If you're part of a nonprofit or part of some other group, this could just help decision making, documenting things. I can go on and on. I'll stop there.
Yeah, it's okay. I just decided that at some point you and I are going to do an episode on this channel called Permaculture and Blockchain. And we're just going to go wild with this idea because I think that's great. I can't remember what there, but one thing I wanted to bring up is we discussed this, Uplift Art and the Uplift World, they kind of came out of different areas, but they were brought together through the idea of creative philanthropy and gratitude and Corey and Blue's collaboration. So there were kind of two communities, one that was blockchain centric organized, which was, Uplift Art, and one that wasn't necessarily, although Corey did do blockchain stuff. But before that, Uplift Art actually ported over from Uplift Nation. And for those of you who might know, Uplift Nation was trying to solve some of these issues that Duane is talking about. And I thought we were a DAC as well. We used the EOS DAC software. We didn't necessarily go public and open up to the public people, but a lot of the decisions that we made behind the scenes at that time were voted on by the DAC members at the time. So that's officially kind of ported into a new business model just because of legislation and having to deal with being a registered charity and stuff like that in the U.S. because the regulations are kind of difficult. But we looked at a model where we had a few models, but one of the models that we looked at was I forget what it is now, but there is a nonprofit charity organization where people can loan other people money, and then those people they might be farmers in Asia or Africa or something like that, or people who want to build small businesses or distribution houses, they can get loans. I think it's kiva.org or something like that. So what I think what you're talking about would be really interesting because you could potentially fractionalize lands. And people could give and take a really small percent of the profit, right? Because I think you do get profit with Kiva.org as well, but the amount of money that you would actually have to put out, that the person using that land would actually have to put out, or gain to actually be able to start farming and making a profit like this. We always talk about this in Uplift Art and the Uplift World. This, to me, after hearing you speak, seems like a win-win-win in a sense, right? They would need less overhead coverage to do what they want to do. Ultimately, the people who had ownership in that fractionalized land would have somewhat of a say in no, you can't bring chemicals and do that, or yes, you can, right? But I think that would be a really interesting model. So, Michael, we were just talking about other structures that we could potentially use a DAC for. So. Yeah, we're at almost an hour and 10 minutes, but I would like to, if it's okay with you, Lisa, go into a little bit of DACify, because I think I don't think many people know what DACify is, and I think it's a really interesting concept. Again, it's not nearly as established as EOS DAC, but the structures within DACify, I think, allow for some problems that might have arisen out of the EOS DAC structure. and some of these other DAC structures, right? So I mean, and I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not saying anyone's better than the other, but like inherently, we are human, and whatever we program or whatever we design or whatever we create is always going to have its limitations, right? I mean, I think we're finding that out again. I think we're finding that out recently with all the community talks that are going on with Block One and Dan Larmer. I mean, he's an active part of the community again. He's talking, he's getting people riled up. I mean, where was he for the last year? To all of you fudders out there, I've been saying for a year, I'm pretty sure he was gagged, right? Like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't allowed to speak on what he wasn't, what he, like, under the umbrella of Block One, I'm pretty sure he wasn't allowed to say the things that he's saying now. You know, and whether that be right or wrong, I'm not criticizing Block One. You know, obviously they're multi-million-dollar corporation, probably soon to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But like, you know, they do have to play hockey in a little bit of a different way. So I think, you know, it's really interesting to see that this playing out as it is now, right? But for example, there's issues with corporations, there's issues with companies, there's issues with small businesses, and of course there's issues with DACs and DAC software. So Michael and Duane, whenever Duane comes back, and Lisa, are there any, like, you know, shortcomings that you guys have seen out of the DAC software that you guys have been using?
You mean the software itself, or just in general things that occur with DACs?
You are officially co-host, so you can answer that question however you want, Michael.
Fair enough. I don't know. I guess one of the biggest issues I see with you know, I guess normalizing everybody's vote and weight and things like that is communities and even block producers and things like that tend to get themselves into an a paralysis by analysis type of thing. You know, is that everybody's weight is equal, but if you fractionalize everybody enough, you kind of can grind things slower than need be. Now, how you address that is, you know, you structure your DACs respectively. All right, the important stuff, you really do need 15 of 21. Well, maybe, you know, if it's simply paying bills every month, well, it's like, look, you want 3 or 5 or 7 people, but you don't really need all 15 because everybody agrees these people, you know, have more control over minor task types of things. Anyway, so that's one issue, and that's not really a software thing particularly. It's more of a just DAC structure, and when everybody has a voice, everybody wants their voice to be heard, and maybe not always listen to everybody else's. But it's the mechanism to come to that consensus.
One thing I've seen just on the tech side, and Luke alluded to it, is, you know, we're forming a structure that needs a community first and is resilient because it has community members with different skills. But then you don't see that same resiliency in the people developing the software, right? We have single points of failure. So I don't think the EOS DAC team would mind if I said, you know, there was one mastermind behind that code, and because it was so brilliant, it wasn't able to have a distributed team come and assist with that code to keep it up. I think DAClify is probably in the same arena, where you have a community that's using this software and it's great, but, you know, the person that's, you know, coded it has gone on to different things. So, you know, when it comes to, you know, that's what I was trying to get across, is that sure, it's great that we have these communities that feel it needs a software. We don't. We can do this with pen and paper. The software is a nice luxury to be using all the attributes of the blockchain, which is fantastic, and obviously it's very, very exciting. But I guess the problem with the software is just having enough of a distributed autonomous community of developers, right? And those developers, you know, they're creating a software for all the members to have an equitable share, but they've left themselves out of that equation. right? Now, don't get me wrong. There could be proposals to keep those, programmers and coders going, but it's a way smaller community than the communities that want to use the software. So we just had an incredible demo from the Telos group, and I think it was the first time I've seen a DAC software that actually had the resiliency of a coder community using a software. And why is that? Is they're eating their own dog food. The whole Telos or Telos network has used their consensus voting model or group decision model. We call it a DAC, or I guess they call it Telos Decide, is actually using that at the core level to put out proposals for the whole Telos ecosystem. So for the first time, I've seen, probably, and I'm hoping here that there's some rewards, I guess it's built in to their ethics on Telos that those block producers that are being rewarded are also updating and keeping that core function of that code going. So to have independent groups, hats off to them, the EOS DAC team, pieces and bits with DAClify, spending their time and not being rewarded to make these tools for us was great. But until these modules are built in at an infrastructure layer 1 layer, it's not resilient, right? And like, once again, the first thing I've seen that is resilient is Telos, and I'm very excited to hear Luke Stokes, new rendition of creating a group and having decision makers in with his FIO DAC. But I guess, a question we'd have to him is, how are you going to replace yourself then to bring other people to come to consensus to be pushing updates? And we're in an EOS DPoS world where some of the top end code, is coming from block 1. So even if these modules were complete in its entirety, you'd still need a team to, do the updates that are coming from above to keep things going. So in the technical world of using DPoS and EOSIO chains to form groups and DACs, we need that same resiliency of custodians and a resilient network of coders that have some incentive to keep this tech going on forever, right? So that's what I see as the default. The problem with the tech is just that it's not redundant and resilient, because it's just been some really great leaders that have taken on the challenge of building the software. And hats off to Telos on the first one that seems like, hey, I have a little bit more confidence that suite of software is going to last, because it's almost at a system level.
Yeah, I actually don't know about that one. I haven't been keeping up with it, so that's interesting to hear. And just on your comment, like I don't think that you're wrong, but I think there's actually two issues there. And just to compound that, like it is a big issue with the DAC software itself, like you mentioned. But it's also an issue, I think, with the projects who are using the DAC and as like a governance model or a voting model, that are building their own software, because you might only have like one person within that DAC who's like coding everything, right? And then, if they leave, it falls apart as well. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting concept. I'll tell you. So I want to know more about the Telos thing as well. You said it's called Telos Decide. I think I've heard of it, but they're essentially building like a DAClify or an EOS DAC to enable people to like join the DAC and then build that out, and then that software is open source so other projects can use it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And the strength in that is that the block producers, or I shouldn't say that, I guess it's their not federation, but the
board developers.
The board is actually using that to put out worker proposals and reward the community. So I just like it that it's, they're eating their own dog food as a whole, blockchain using that suite of software, or that software suite.
Fair enough. Yeah. And Michael, did you have something else to add to that?
I was gonna say, it's just being a Telos VP, I'm aware, and in the core dev group. So yeah, they basically have a group of super nerds that kind of participate on the core dev for Telos. So Telos, and it's kind of like other blockchains that kind of have a foundation or a group of coders that's trying to develop things for the core chain and focusing on the core chain aspects, as opposed to, other projects and things along that line. And of course, Telos's big strive from the very beginning has always been governance and not explicitly DACs, but empowering the token holders and, having options to limit whales and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's why, Telos Decide is the new framework for kind of all voting and grouping and DACs. And yeah, drives their worker proposal system and being maintained going forward. So yeah, really excited about, and of course it's all on chain. You could write your own interface if you really wanted to. It's not like you have to rely on their single server. The framework's out there.
Yeah, I'm totally gonna have to check that out. I don't know that much about it first.
We had Douglas on a call yesterday, day before, I don't know, it all blurs together, but he kind of ran through the process of you log into the website, you say, I want to create a DAC, here's how I want it to vote, and poof, here go all the, the voting tokens and whatnot.
Yeah, we were supposed to have him before the Telos, token blew up and all the Ethereum stuff came on, but we screwed up and he was waiting in the wrong channel, and then we just did something else. We felt really bad for blowing him off. So I'm hoping to get on again after the DACATHon. That DACATHon is over, because the timing is a little bit weird. I want to say one more thing as well. One of the and I guess this is a question for you two who understand what's going on with the Telos system. But I like this concept. Well, like you said, Pieces, when he designed DACify, one of the concepts that he implemented was kind of like DACs within DACs. And I think that this is a really interesting concept, and it's not really possible on EOS DAC, as powerful as the EOS DAC software is, and as well as it works at times. It's just not possible. And I like this concept because, I think, Duane, it was you, I think, who was referring to this, right? Like, you can then have like a marketing team who are a DAC, right? And they vote on something, and then it gets passed up the chain, right? And then you can have the dev team who are DAC, and they vote on something. And so you have like almost this like weird governmental structure. It sounds bad, but it's like a pyramid of DACs in a sense, right? And I really like that concept, rather than having like a whole group of devs that are running a DAC at any given time, or a whole group of marketers that are running a DAC at a given time. You can have these like smaller kind of units, right? And I think what the benefit of that would allow is, like Luke said earlier, he's part of the Crown DAC, but he just doesn't have time to put into it, right? And I get this, like I'm sure Duane and Max is in the comments, Lisa as well, like it's hard for you guys to branch out into other DACs as well, right? Like I know I'm on 2 and I can't make like half of the calls, which is why I had to leave the other 2 that I was on, right? And like I never actually got into Crown. I don't have issues with Crown, but there's just no time, right? And I think like this becomes almost like you said, you guys have weekly meetings on Crown, right? And like people show up, they come to the meetings, you get the proposals, you get the funding. Like we said the same thing with like the FIO protocol DAC. This is a really big issue, right? And it's good because you get people who are dedicated to the DAC that they're part of, and great things like the MetaDAC coming out, where we can have this DACAthon, kind of roundtable and all of the events that are associated with your event. But like it does become like a little bit bad because then certain people leave, right? And so like I think I like this idea because someone like Luke, he might not have time to follow everything that's going on in the Crown DAC, but maybe like from a developmental side, right? The coding is all done, the everything is all done, right? Like he could still be a part of that, and that would limit like his necessity to always be a part of it, right? So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think about that, because like from my perspective, like from a governance perspective, especially like a city governance, like a city governance or a county governance or a state governance or a provincial governance or even like a country governance. This is kind of how I feel like things should be, right? Like, and I'm not even talking about like, laws and things like this, right? Like, but or even like corporate governance or things like that, right? Like I'm like, if you look at what happened recently, like in the US, right? Like now there's a lot of states where marijuana is legal now in the US, right? And you've got all of these people that are still locked up in prison, most of them people of color that have actually been thrown in jail because they're really good at what they do. And now you have these corporations that are coming in that are basically, growing all of this stuff that like these people behind bars are still there, right? So we won't go into like, I don't want to go into the racial stuff, or I don't want to go into like the underlying dynamics of, power and control. But I think this is a really interesting concept, right? Like we have these for-profit prisons. I mean, should prisons be for-profit? No, they shouldn't. They should be DACs, where the people like who are, voting on the laws and things like that, right? Like, should we have, like, another big issue is like water in California, right? Like I get it. Yeah, please stop growing grass in California that you're having to pump in from the desert, right? But like, should we have like a nation that is, what is 70% reliant on all of California food, so that we actually have to like, shut down, water and things like this, right? Like and another classic example is like, yes, we're going to build a wall because we got to keep the Mexicans out. All right. No, you don't. You just got to swim under the cavern. Right. But seriously, these are things that like should be decided like on like a DAC, not by like a president of government. Right. Like whether it's like Texas decides they want to build a wall, that's cool. California decides they want to keep it open, and that's cool. Like this is where I see these structures like kind of coming into play. And as well, from a financial point of view, right? Like essential services, I get it. Bitcoin people, Ethereum people, EOS people, not EOS so much because we got our own problems. We don't really have time for the bigger picture right yet. But I totally get it, right? Like I get it. We want to be decentralized. We want to be off grid. We don't want to pay taxes. Taxes are theft. Okay, fine. If you don't want to freaking pay taxes, get a drone and stand on it like Superman and stop using the freaking sidewalks. Stop using the roads. And I'm getting a little bit passionate about that. Right? If you're in your car driving to the Bitcoin ATM and you're using the roads, then you should be paying taxes for the roads, right? And this is my personal thing. However, paying taxes for Christmas lights like downtown when you hate Christmas because Santa Claus is a fraud, like all of these things, right? Like I don't have kids. I don't need to go see Christmas lights. I mean, I don't even watch Christmas movies, for example, right? These things, I think, from a monetary point of view of like all governments, I think have a really good use potential for DACs. Like I honestly believe that like education, healthcare, essential services like clean water, plumbing, electricity, these are essential services. These should be provided by to everyone, right? Whether you're decentralized or whether you're not, right? But what's that? Maybe 40% of all tax income goes towards those decentralized services. And if you had a DAC, you could go in as a person, as an individual, you could vote for one of these groups, just as lobbyists do for the central government, except those lobbyists are paid by corporations. They're not citizens that live in the streets, right? So you could go in and you could vote, to be able to designate your extra, taxable income to the areas that you want to see your community grow. And I think especially in a place like the United States, that's a really powerful thing, because one of the things that the US actually has going for it, despite all of its problems, is the US is a collection of smaller communities that are really passionate about where they live, and they're really proud about what they've created and what they've developed, right down to their like local high school football teams, right down to like their ecosystems, right down to their small towns and their city centers. This is something that you don't see in Asia or maybe in South America, right? Like every I shudder to say this because I'm putting people in a box, and I don't like to put people in a box, but like, you know, every capital city, you know, south of Texas essentially looks the same, right? Like, it's same structures. It was kind of like Spanish, you know, kind of design. But if you go to America and you go state by state around some of these really beautiful, iconic, like small towns, they're all different, and they're different because of the people. And I think like the way that the U.S. government is structured, you know, again, it causes issues with things like elections and stuff like that. But you could essentially designate DAC structures for some of these communities, and I think it would make the daily lives of people a lot better. That's kind of my rant on that. I'm not really sure why or where that came from, but apparently I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I just really needed to get that out. So yeah.
I just want to bring it back how you started, and nesting groups of people that are interested in one segment is where the next evolution of our DACs. You know, you went into the very big picture, so I'll bring it down to the DACs we're part of in this EOS IO community. When I first saw the DAClify software and seeing how you can nest DACs and DACs, it's brilliant because it solves the problem you identified, is saying that there's different groups. We have the techie guys, we have the marketing, we have, you know, different categories of things we're doing. And that was going to cross-pollinate if we can nest those DACs. So I think if there was a DAC of developers that, you know, they could be part of Crown DAC and only focus on that. You know, they don't need to vote on all the things they're not interested in on the marketing or the promos or the, you know, whatever we're developing. So that's, you know, bringing people into the similar nested groups of nested DACs is going to be the next evolution. And if to be able to see that on the techie side, to see that here's a DAC and we have the Vigor marketing group, all of a sudden they can cross-pollinate and come into Crown for their own little meeting and say, hey, we're already good at marketing and we already have the ear to these people and they already understand DACs. Mm-hmm. You know, we can pop in and give us a proposal to help this DAC, and let's help all these different groups. So that's then to bring it up to your whole government level. That's the only way it's going to happen. We don't, you know, I'm not going to be, I don't want to be a city council in a DAC having to hear about all the different segments of, you know, that, you know, our water's important, our sewage, our financial systems, this, right? You're just going to participate in that little group, but then you can cross-pollinate and go, hey, you know, I can drop into the next city's DAC and help out because we've found something out that worked for us. I don't need to be, you know, limited to this one different group. So thinking how the brilliance of, you know, that sort of structure to be able to see these different micro groups within the DAC are really, really, yeah, I think that's going to be the next step. Yeah, and that's what brings together the community more. It's going to cross-pollinate. You're going to be able to be more resilient, that you're not just reliant on the marketing for Crown. You can be marketing for Vigor. You can be marketing for HydroDAC. You can be on the Telos group. So, yeah, I think that's really important because when it gets too big and you lose interest, you know, it's... Yeah, you don't want to be... We're doing this because it's fun and you're interested and good at something. You don't want to be, you know, pigeonholed into a bigger group and deciding on things that don't even matter, because then your vote, you're not putting any effort into the vote. You're not reading the proposals. You don't care. It's now a job that you're like, oh God, I'm gonna have to come to a meeting and push a button to get something passed that I don't care about, right? So yeah, I think that's the right distributed model, and it has to be on smaller groups. You know, I'm going through Dan Larimer's book, and it comes down to that point that how do you deal with a really large group? Well, it's all these smaller groups. You know, you can only scale so big to have a manageable group, or to have consensus in a group, or have your, So you're definitely onto the right track, and I think that's something that we should explore for the DACAthon and people building this out. And then I'll go on just a small rant. One thing we've seen with these DACs, if I could have a wish list of what we'd have in a DAC, would be, we mentioned Luke Stokes, EOS, a fork, which is FIO. We talked about Telos, which has a DAC structure, Telos Decide, DAC Factory, and DAClify on EOS. What's missing here, guys? What, did anyone say wax? Did I hear wax in NFTs? So there's one thing with wax, and I'm just in the next hour, I'm going to put out a bunch of videos on how you can take your Wax web wallet and create a custodial wallet. The Wax wallet is incredible to onboard new people, very easy to the ecosystem, but you can take that next step and create a custodial wallet that then would allow multi-sigs. And I love Telos. We've been a block producer there, love EOS, but the excitement right now around NFTs and a lot of our energy is being spent on Wax. And we do need, at the very least, a multi-sig for some of our assets. I belong to different groups that, kinder miners. It's not a DAC, but we have, the participants in there that at least have a multi-sig, right? That we, if the account gets corrupted, there's other people, we need 2 of 3 people to change a key, or at the very least, the participants in our little group can use that account to send out NFTs. So because we have all these new people into Wax, I'd love to see out of our DACAthon a very, very simple DAC-like structure. When you go over to Telos, you'll see that the list of options, right down to, do you want quadratic voting? Do you have one member, one vote voting? Like, the list of options there just opens your mind of like what's possible, even how to vote. But we're dealing with NFTs. Let's get a DAC. Excuse me. Let's have a DAC where you have your NFT membership to signal what we do in that little group. You're just laying down your card in a group circle to belong to a group. We look at really successful projects, right? The uplift, those sort of things will do. We'll need this sort of structure, and we can use something different than tokens, weighted tokens in our wallet. We can use these fun NFTs to signal a vote or to make decisions. So, and a lot of these other things are, at least Telos is open source. Maybe we do something with that, but I just think being innovative of, limiting the options of what the community can accept. And inspired, you can tell I really value Max Infield's opinions, and that's, you'll hear him say this a lot, of we don't need the full stack of all the options of voting and everything, just something very simple to demonstrate what an MSIG and what a collective is in Wax. So I encourage and will perversely incentivize people during this hackathon that could just demonstrate a working model of something we can do with multi-sigs and group decisions within Wax.
Yeah, and I think eventually, like, there are going to be DAC structures that pop up within the Uplift world. And Michael, like, that brings up a really interesting point. Like some of these community clusters that are building out, like, maybe multi-sig for, like, development rights on certain parts of the central land is a really good idea, right? But yeah, I think that's, it's really interesting how you kind of tied those together, because, like, I guess, like, from a Wax blockchain perspective, right? They've got the Wax Council that's kind of like operational, but from a community level or from a project level, I mean, like, it'd probably be good for you guys, like, to be able, because you guys create lots of NFTs, and I mean, Lisa's always giving them away, and you might want to be like, no, you got to not give so many away. We need to put a cap on this giving millions of NFTs away every day.
Lisa won't accept that. That is blasphemy in Lisa's book.
No, but I think it's a really, like, it's even just down to, like, how many tokens are going to be minted from a product, or from a, like, that's a really interesting idea. So yeah, I'll clip that and put it out for your DACAthon. Like, there's so many actually clips that I need to learn how to do clips, but there's some good ones on. I just want to address the comment that was on the screen before. Max had a really good point I kind of value Max's opinion as well. I don't know him nearly as well as you, but I know him well enough to know he's an incredibly intelligent, human being, which I like. And what was on the screen before was eventually people will prefer governance over government. For me, this speaks like as a philosopher, as a permaculture person, as a person who's right now involved with quite a few projects, too many to be honest, and working towards my own ideals. This is what I think is really interesting about DACs, because if you look at it from a non-emotional perspective, it's only people who want to govern. I'm kind of sugarcoating this or putting this in a box, but hear me out. It's only people who want to govern or want to at least govern themselves that have a problem with governance, right? The majority, and this is what we see in blockchain technology a lot, right? The thing with blockchain technology where we're in this bubble of 1% of the global population, right? Less than 1%. And people are saying, no, not your keys, not your stuff. Like, you need to make sure that it's decentralized. We got to take our rights back from the governments. I'm sorry, blockchain people, but 99% of the global population doesn't care. They're more worried about what food is popping up on Twitter that their friends ate and the directions to that restaurant. Like, in the first world. In the third world, they're more worried about where their freaking food is coming from or how they can actually sustain it and live. Even in India, they're more worried about the fact that there's inflation and they're banning Bitcoin, or they're saying they're going to ban Bitcoin again. I mean, at least China's out of that phase. But anyway, this is really important, because I think this is a really key factor to DACs and DAC structure. The people who are going to be involved in these DACs are going to be the ones that want to say in the governance. And the people who aren't involved, they're not going to care either way. And so those people who prefer governance over government, they will be a part of that community. And unless somebody in the governance DAC circle really pisses them off, they're going to be okay with not having to deal with it. And I think this is kind of, a really interesting point when it comes to DACs and governance, because if we look at real world governance, what we have is a bunch of people ticked off and they can't really do anything about it. But, with a DAC structure, you can if you want to. You have that ability to go in there and pitch your case. You have that ability to walk into the White House, per se, sign up and sit in on any meeting in a lot of these DACs, right? Whether you take that opportunity is up to you, but that ability does exist. So yeah, I think that's a really important point, that I just kind of wanted to bring up. But honestly, guys, I could sit here and talk to you guys about this, forever, because I've been, writing about this kind of stuff even before blockchain existed, before I even knew what blockchain was, and that's why I found, so much symmetry in what is decentralized government and blockchain, in my own opinion, as Duane actually knows, because once you go down that avenue of sustainability, even if you're looking at environment or agriculture, it eventually draws you back into that idea of communities and governance, because it doesn't matter how sustainable your property is. If I'm just going to say it, ban me, YouTube. If Monsanto's beside you and they decide to sue you because some pollen happened to blow in the wind over to your cornfield, you're completely screwed, right? This is a bigger issue. This is a bigger governance issue, right? Molokai is a really good example. I mean, Molokai is essentially a testing ground for herbicides and pesticides, and they're pissed about it, utterly pissed. People with guns in America that are pissed, at the rest of Hawaii, and that doesn't really happen. Hawaii people are really freaking nice, right? And yeah, this is a really big problem. So I think addressing these issues at a community level and letting people have their say, as opposed to central governments, right? It's the same thing in Canada, right? Even on a macro level, a lot of people in the West were extremely ticked off at Ottawa, because Ottawa is really far away. I mean, it's more than a few days, right? So, why are they deciding where our money is spent? Or people in Washington, right? or wherever you happen to be, these capitals of the world. So I think this is a really important, topic, and I'm really happy that you guys put together, the DACATHON as part of Krownlandia and MetaDAC, and I'm really happy to be able to just sit here and rant with some people who I really respect in the space. And
I've got just a really big inspiration off of what actions we can take to back to the environment, protecting the environment. In Canada, to stop pipelines, even when land was owned by natives and different tribes, that didn't stop the pipeline that they didn't want going through these virgin, incredible forests and really valuable land. You know what did? Art. Art is going to save the world, and art's going to save our environment. And you know what it did is an artist putting up incredible art pieces in his land, and that was protected from the rights because it was his art. They had to build the pipeline around his protected art. So he turned nature into art and his common rights to save that. So if we had a collective of a DAC that rewarded artists to come and engage in nature to protect it, it might be stronger than us doing best management practices, might be stronger than educating people on why water and resilient systems and a diversity of plants and building soil is important. It might, so how do we intersect this art and NFTs and ownership and fractionalization to protect Earth? I think art will save the world. So, and once again, Max Infield's influence, he put up this question, I believe it was in Sense Chat a while ago, and I didn't have an answer until now. And I think that's, the intersection of community involvement, DACs sharing our passions and getting an equitable share out of something. And, how do we overlay digital NFTs, physical art and physical environment and terrestrial things to save these valuable ecosystems that provide for us on a daily basis.
Yeah, and on that note, sold, done, finished. You, me, Max, and my good friend, our good friend, M Blue of Uplift Art, because I'm gonna send him that clip for sure, because he honestly believes that. With all that he's done with Uplift Art and Corey, we really need to have a show at some point in time and just dive into that entitled "Art Will Save the World," because I think you're not the only one that believes that. And yeah, I mean, I won't be surprised if Michael shows up too, because he's awesome. So on that note, Lisa, what do we got? What do we got coming up tomorrow? If you want to just give us an outlay.
Well, sure. Let's start with today first. We have some conversations with some groups that are considering becoming DACs, or at least incorporating DAC-like principles in different ways. And so we have quite a few community discussions today. And I encourage everyone who is interested to check DACATHON.com and link to the schedule and see where they want to pop into the Zoom and listen and weigh in, and then we'll upload the videos later so that people can see them if they're not able to attend. But it should be very interesting because, and we will start with the community brainstorming what is a DAC, similar to what we've done here, but at the topic and conceptual level. And that, I think, will possibly illustrate some strengths in the conceptual models and also some needs for communities that are considering that. And then this afternoon Pacific time, we have, after our open discussion at noon Pacific time, we're going to have Luke join us, and he's going to talk about DAC, and he's going to share his brand new software that he alluded to for exactly what we're talking about, community registration, voting, governance, elections, making decisions, and we're gonna brainstorm that a bit. So we have a very It's a very informal, but very packed and exciting day today where people are involved. And we're going to bring out the concepts around DAC throughout the day. So hopefully everyone will join.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, I guess, yeah, sorry about that. For me, it's tomorrow. For you guys, it's today, early morning. So.
Okay. Okay.
Hey,
right.
Duane,
You've already lived today.
Duane, I'm gonna let you do the honors. If you've ever watched, any karate movie at all ever, you'll know, how to break a tree log with your hands.